Hello guys, today is a beautiful Saturday. In fact, it's the nicest Saturday we've had. It's nicest, only nice day really we've had in the last month, minimum. No exaggeration. The sun's out and it's not raining and it's not -2. I'm sorry I didn't get the Q&A done yesterday. Plans of mice and men didn't work out, but today I've got a full day of outside work and I brought my camera with me and I'm going to answer some questions in between. Now, just interesting enough, this is literally the worst camera that I have, and I've made a little modification to it to see if it can make it look a little bit better. So I'm curious if it looks like this is filmed on a potato, if it's acceptable. Feel free to comment on that also. I'm just curious. Martin asks, when you're working an entry, are you looking at the DOM as well? Yes, but not a whole lot, Martin. I'm just looking at the DOM just as a glance to make sure things kind of line up and there's not some massive accumulation of orders on the opposite side of my trade or something. But as a rule, just a glance to make sure everything's running properly. Nizarama, why don't you trade on Fridays? Well, I do sometimes trade on Fridays. I used to take Fridays off really just as a break because when you're trading every day, it's kind of intense and there's just always lots of other stuff that I have to do. But I like taking Fridays off, really just personal preference. I'd love to trade 5 days a week, really, but realistically, my schedule, that's probably never going to happen. But if I can get up to 4, that's pretty much perfect. So no real big reason. Sometimes Fridays can be big mover days, especially in the last hour. And I will occasionally trade that. But as a rule, if I'm going to take a day off, it tends to be Friday. Ben Foreman says, I've heard a bit about how different instruments have their own unique personalities in the way they move. Have you noticed this to be true? Absolutely, yes. A lot of instruments have their own personality. Indexes, as a rule, have kind of the same personality, but they are all a little bit nuanced. Energies kind of have their own personality, and the grains very much have their own personality also. So it really pays to focus, I find, to focus on one instrument specifically, at least one at a time, and get to learn, get to know it, how it runs, how it behaves normally, and kind of get to know its personality. That's why I much prefer trading a small basket of things regularly than trying to trade stocks and running through scanners and maybe trading something that I'd never traded before today and then trading something else I never traded before tomorrow. Mr. Howard, I always appreciate your comments. You remind me of a young Dan Aykroyd. I guess I need sunglasses then. I actually get a real kick out of Dan Aykroyd, and that's quite interesting that you mentioned that. I always told my wife if she ever lets me name a dog, I'm going to name it Elwood, but so far it hasn't happened. I probably messed this up, but V Cabezas, thank you for your question. How do you do your work the night before? I mean, how do you watch? Essentially, probably, that's on my day in the life of a trader video when I talk about the routine the night before. So essentially what I do, and it's kind of ever evolving, but usually I do slip down and kind of get a little bit of stuff done in the evening and just update my charts. I get a start on my cheat sheet, of course. Nowadays I don't do too much. In the evenings I used to journal my trades. I've completely stopped doing that. Not that it's a bad thing to do, I just don't bother anymore. It's really easy to just go back and look at them in the logs. So to kind of just go over things again, get a good start on my cheat sheet, and I kind of just like to, check it out in the evening and just see if anything funny's happened. Roger Harris has a good question. Has been asked before, but I know a lot of people, haven't all been here forever, so I'll answer it. Essentially asking, what about leaving a runner on? I don't trade with a runner. I don't like trading with a runner. I have traded with a runner before. I have had success with trading with a runner, but I just don't like it. It's not for me. The main reason is I've kind of honed everything I've focused on, I've honed on the skill of achieving positive points per day, period. And when you have a runner, it skews your results. You're always going to take a full loss. Say if you have 2 positions on and you use one as a runner, you're always going to take a full loss on both positions as a rule whenever you stop out or whenever you punch out early. When you take a winner, some of your winners are going to be partial, and it just skews the overall net points thing. And to me, what's most important to me is net points. That's how I've focused. That's what I rely on, is being able to get consistent positive points. I like to keep my position size the same, so my wins are on the same size as my losses. Yeah, nothing wrong with a trailer. Lots of people use one. For me, it just takes too long and it's too much of a crapshoot. I'd rather just bank a smaller amount on the full position and come back next day and try and do it again. Steve asked about footprints. Footprints are interesting. I went through a period where I looked at footprints several years ago. You can, if you're on TradingView, you can get a footprint overlay. There's a few different ones. I actually started looking at a couple of them when you asked the question, Steve. None of them look as good as ones that you can get on dedicated platforms. Footprint imbalances, I don't use them. They're not part of my analysis. I can't give you a real good opinion on it because it's nothing that I've really used beyond just a casual look, you know. I know what they are, I know how they work, but they're never something that I've found value in for me. Not to say they couldn't be valuable for you. Jack Nicholas actually, just next question along the list here, says he's trying to find them and so far they're not working. On TradingView, there are footprint overlays. I don't believe there's a stock one. They're done up by users. I did find one of them that does look somewhat okay. The text kind of overlaps one another on most of them, but one of them does look okay. I'll see if I can find that again and let you know what it is. Question from Mike. What broker do I use for futures as a Canadian? And can I tell them how to connect it and all that? Well, that's a good question, Mike. And I've been at this for a while. I haven't found a satisfactory Canadian option to trade domestically. I've always used American brokers. I've had excellent success with AMP futures. But there are any number of discount dedicated futures brokers in the US. It's just way easier to use that. The only other option is Interactive Brokers does have a Canadian wing that will let you trade futures in a similar way. However, the margins are much higher. The commissions are much higher. It's not ideal, really. And now, nice thing, of course, being a Canadian, if your money is protected at any broker, right? Any CIPF protected broker, which is essentially any legit broker. So that's nice. So you can just have as much money there as you want, and doesn't maybe matter so much that the margins are a lot higher because it's insured. You deal with the U.S. broker, that money is not insured. If the broker happens to go belly up, your money's most likely gone, or at least gone for a long time. The thing is, though, the margins are so much lower, you don't have to park very much there. So what I do and what I suggest to other people who are Canadians is just pick a good U.S. broker, park as little money there as you realistically can to account for anticipated drawdown, worst case anticipated drawdown, and your margin required to take the trades, and go with that. As far as connecting Sierra Chart, it's really quite easy. You just enter your CQG login credentials. If you're on CQG data, if you're on different data and order routing, then you just enter in the credentials for that, and it just connects it. It's easy. In a couple videos ago, whenever I had that data problem, I actually showed the screen where you do that, and I'll try and put that up there wherever it goes so you can see that. Daniel Wolf essentially asks, are you self-taught? Yes, I am self-taught. I think I answered this question, but it doesn't show my answer. You may have asked it twice, but a lot of people are wondering this, I imagine. So yes, I am self-taught. Yes, I have taken various different trading courses over the years. They were all useless with the exception of one I took from Linda Raschke. And I don't trade the way Linda does, but I certainly admire her. She's one of my trading heroes, and I just like listening to her talk. So there's lots of interesting stuff in that course, for instance, and I'm glad I took it. Every other one was pretty much just a waste of time, but you don't really know till you try. Speed Fast Man, he thinks I look like the main actor from Synecdoche, New York. I'll have to look that up and see what that is. I'm assuming it's a TV show. Yeah, I just looked them up. Yeah, I definitely can see the resemblance, Speed Fast Man. Funny enough, I've never had anybody say I look like Dan Aykroyd. In real life, I've had a number of people, especially when I was thinner years ago, say that I look like Matt Damon. To give you an idea how much of a pop culture outcast I am, I didn't know what he looked like. I had to look it up on the internet. So, what can I say? I never really watched much TV or movies. Vadeka. Curious, how many points on the average on a month do I average? That's a good question, and I can't tell you that right now. I honestly have to go and look at it. I really don't know. I suppose on a daily basis, I probably average somewhere around 7 or 8, maybe. I don't think I average 10. It's depending on how many days a month I trade, really. I don't even think of that to give you an idea if that means anything, but as long as it's positive, that's really all that matters to me. Okay, Juka and Ed both have a question. Why don't I use the ES continuous symbol on TradingView to point my lines on, etc., and then they won't go missing every time I do a rollover. Very good question. Now, I do use that for the daily chart, as you notice, but I don't use it for the individual ones, and I have thought about it. But the thing is, the way the continuous contract works, it's, I guess, not a tradable symbol, right? It rolls to the next contract at arbitrary times. And I sometimes roll at different times than it does. And often that will mean that prices may be, 5-10 points away from each other in the 2 different months. And I want to make sure that I'm charting the contract that I'm trading. So that's why I don't do that. And then also, it's a little bit more of a hassle whenever I have to roll, but it also makes me then go back and look over price again and replot my lines again. I can always look at, another chart, but I generally don't do that except for the really long-term levels. I just stretch it out and mark it all up anew again. And it just gives me a fresh look at everything. Joseph Pachetti asks if I could go into more detail on how I traded in my accumulation phase. Yeah, and I mean, that's not something that I'm going to be doing on YouTube because I've kind of got there already, and I don't need to do that right now. It's kind of in a maintenance mode, but and nor would I advocate trading really the way I did before. But really, it's essentially the same process, except a few more trades per day and 5 to 10 times the size, pretty much. So just a lot bigger size, a lot more pressure, a lot more sweating in between the trades, and pretty much the same way I trade now. I would tend to try and hold on to targets a little bit longer sometimes, and I would just trade further into the day, but not 9 to 5 or anything like that. But very similar method, just much more aggressive. And why don't I do that now? Because I don't have to, and it's really not fun. And it's also not something I really want to teach to people, because the odds of being successful trading like that are way less than trying to trade the way I do now. Scott, thanks for your comments as always, Scott. When you say you're watching the bonds, what ticker symbol specifically am I watching? I only ever watch the 30-year, and I only ever trade the 30-year. That's the ZB or the ZB. That's the one that I look at, Scott. I look at it for general market direction. I like to see, now it's a little bit different now with the interest rates going up so high, but in general, if I'm looking for the market to go down, I'm looking for bonds to be going up, and vice versa. But I look at the ZB, and that's the only one that I chart, the only one that I trade. And I quite like trading, and I just don't really do it anymore. Not to say that I won't. I have taken a couple trades on it in the last year, I think, but it just takes a little bit longer. But you get a good bang for your buck with it. It's 31 bucks a tick, right? So but it moves slowly, so it's manageable. Another question from Niz: is the tick really essential? It just follows what price does first, right? Well, not always. That's the whole reason why I have it. It often does follow price, yes, but not always, and it does give a good sense of where the market is and whether it's extended or not. I will sometimes favor a long trade when the tick is extended low, and the tick can be extended low when price is, extended way down low, but it can also be extended low when price hasn't really extended down that low itself. So it is an individual measurement, and I do like to have that. Praful Moon, thanks for your question. It says, can you show where I watch other indices performance and any free website useful to watch while taking a trade? Okay, well, I just have it on my TradingView charts. I have it plotted. It's in one of my windows. But you can, it's bright. So bright now I'm complaining about the sun. I have it on my TradingView. I have one of my windows that just has the indexes and some technicals. It just had indexes and currencies in it. I've changed it a little bit so you can see the technicals. So that's on TradingView. It is real-time data, and it's actually free. Like you can't have all those on the same layout, but you can go and open up a couple of free TradingView windows. Say you have one with the ES on it, or one with the Dow on it, one with NASDAQ, and just use the CFD feed, like the Forex feed of the cash price of an instrument. They're all free and they're all real time. So that's the best thing I would say, because you get an actual, like a real chart, that's going to give you whatever length of candles you want, And it is free. You only use one chart at a time, but you could open two windows with one chart each and then just fit them on your monitor if you want to try a couple of indexes at once. As far as other free sites worth looking at, definitely Financial Juice for news, financialjuice.com, and then I find it to be a much better replacement for the Forex Factory site that I used to look at. However, that Forex Factory, I think it's forexfactory.com/calendar. If you just Google Forex Factory calendar, it gives you all the main news releases and information on them when they are and that. But Financial Juice is kind of taking that to a new level, and you can set it to, like, say, to be tuned for futures or index futures or whatever, as opposed to just currencies or the broad market. Tom Brady. Is it the Tom Brady? I understand he plays football, if I'm not mistaken. Probably not the Tom Brady, but thank you for your question, Tom. How do you get a tick chart on TradingView? You can't. That's one of the main flaws with TradingView. You can get like the tick indicator, the NYSE tick. That's under indices, okay? And then you just search for NYSE tick. There's a NASDAQ tick and so on. As far as like the tick indicator, you can get that. But an actual tick chart of an instrument, like a 4,000 tick chart or a 233 tick chart or whatever, you can't get that. I don't really know why. It must have there must be a good reason for it, but you can't get it. So it's just not possible on TradingView yet. Same as you can't get it on MetaTrader. I've been asking them. It's not like they're my best buddies and I know them personally or anything, but I've been requesting that forever. I think a lot of people have, and it's just no indication that it's ever coming, so I'm just not counting on it. But I like TradingView so much for everything else that it's still by far my preferred charting and research platform. Dimitri has a question. How about the 4K TVs? Not too much eye strain when you sit up close instead of several 32s in portrait, let's say. Yeah, eye strain, a non-issue, at least for those TVs and for me. I do have, I do get eye strain in general in front of screens, but if anything, it got better when I went to the TVs as opposed to the 627 monitors that I used to have. Now, they weren't great monitors. They were AOC monitors. If you look in the video on my setup, the top monitor is still one of those old ones. But I find less eye strain now than I did when I had the monitor array. I think a lot of that's maybe because the blacks are so much blacker. It's just a better screen, but eye strain, non-issue for me with those. Nick asking about tick charts. Trying to use a tick chart to paper trade the micro. I use a 4,000. Essentially, how many should I use on the micro? Well, a year ago, I think I said 2,000, and Ed's looking at it on a 2,000. I think that's still fair, though I have noticed that the volume has definitely come up on the micros for sure in the last year. So you might even find you're looking at closer to a 3,000 to get a similar chart as you do with the 4,000 on the mini. Just try it. You can change it easily back and forth. Have two of them open and see which one lines up the most if you want to see things similar to the way I do on the ES. Well, it looks like I missed a couple of those WhatsApp things. Don't you know all you got to do is just WhatsApp this random guy and give him all your money and he'll give you back $62,000 per day, forever, for life. Note to self, WhatsApp this guy. By the way, I don't have WhatsApp, so if you ever see that, it's not me. I don't have WhatsApp or Telegram, and I don't plan to. And I'm not going to put my cell phone number out in the comments. So those are scams. Jono, great question. What's your advice for dealing with choppy days? Typically, I take mean reverse and trades at extreme ends of the current range, but the extremes aren't always clearly defined. I get stopped out by a couple ticks despite getting in close to the top or bottom. Yeah, that is tricky, Jono. One thing in that, I mean, you get to a point where you realize it is a choppy day. Really worthwhile considering just not trading. Just cut it. That's it. It's a choppy day. I'm not going to trade. That's probably the best solution to that in the long run. But it's just a good kind of day to, once you realize it is getting choppy, maybe just sit that out and come back another day. But other than that, mean reversion, but just making sure that your stops are big enough to get around the extreme of the extreme. Try and get the best entry you possibly can, but number one advice is just don't trade those days. Got a couple questions about specific trades, guys. I think there's one from 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, but it's just for me to go back and find that realistically, I couldn't answer the question probably even at the end of the same day, let alone later on. So I probably won't get back on a lot of those just because I'd have to go back and find the trade. And once the trade's done, I don't really think of it. By the end of the day, I sometimes hardly remember where price went. So sorry about that if I don't get back to all those. Try my best to explain them as best I can during the trade, and I'll continue to try and do a better job of that. Alexander here makes a kind of interesting point. Guess this is how a professional handles the market, not like other YouTube non-professionals keep talking about having 2 to 3 losing weeks in a row and is normal when you day trade. Well, that's not abnormal either. And ideally you're not going to have 2 or 3 losing weeks in a row. I mean, if you are, you're probably trading differently. Maybe you're swing trading. If you're swing trading, it wouldn't be uncommon to have even losing months and still be profitable at the end of the year. It all depends on how you're trading. If you're day trading, realistically, you better be profitable every month, and you better be profitable every week as a rule, except for rare exceptions if you want to actually make this something that's consistent. That's the way I've looked at it. I try and be profitable every day. Most days I am, but above all, I'm going to avoid losses. That's number one, of course. You've heard me beat that over and over again. But really, if you're day trading for like 10 points or for trades that are usually done in 10 minutes or something like that, you need to be profitable every month, and you should be profitable every week to do this sustainably. It's not that it isn't normal to have a few losing weeks in a row. It's just that it's not likely that you're going to be successful if you're consistently having that trading the way I do. Now, if you are a swing trader and you're putting trades on that last all day, overnight, a couple of days, that's going to be entirely typical to have losing weeks, because you might only take one trade that week, and if it's a loser, there's a losing week. But the next week you get a real nice one, and it brings your month, well into the black. So that's my take on that. Well, I'm making some progress. I got all these beautiful trees out here, and not one of them will fall in this pool. So I got to keep doing this every year. But going to get back to some questions. Going to get back to Alexander's question. There was a second part to it, and I'm just going to talk about that for a minute. He says, let's say if someone becomes profitable learning market structure, spending 5,000 to 10,000 hours playing the charts, after that market conditions change a little bit, how's it going to make out? Is it going to be still be able to be profitable? Well, if realistic, if you spend 5,000 to 10,000 hours on this, yes, that's not going to be a problem, because and you're successful, trading successfully. You're going to know the market, and you're going to see the changes come, and you're going to adapt to them probably without even noticing. There's no substitute for time in the seat in this business, and in anything it has any kind of an art component to it, right? You look at like a carpenter or a welder or a surgeon or anything like that. It's not something that you can learn completely from books and immediately succeed at. It takes hands-on time and time doing it, time in the seat. There's no substitute for that. Plum busting makes a funny comment here, talking about my dumpster fire day video a while ago. He says, dumpster fire day for me is getting into a rage and losing about 2 months worth. Yes, I've done that before, multiple times. However, you only do that so many times before you get sick enough of it, it hurts enough that you will finally learn your lesson and not let it happen again. I often tell people the thing that does most people in is those catastrophic lost days. You hear me say that. Avoid catastrophic lost days. Put it right in your rules so that can't happen to you. Don't let it happen, because that is what takes the most people out of this more than anything. You can recover from a losing day easy if it's small enough to get back in one trading day. But if it's 2 months worth, it almost feels like, why bother? Jack Smith, what's the difference between trading the S&P and trading the S&P futures? Well, it depends on what you mean by the S&P. Maybe it means the SPY. The SPY is an ETF, exchange traded fund, that follows the cash price approximately of the S&P, and the futures contract is the futures contract that essentially often follows the price, but it's not exactly the same, because it's got a target, a moving target on it. Whatever the contract month is, you're trading the overall market's expected price of the index, in this case, in December, right? So, because we're currently trading the December contract. So it's a moving target. Now, the difference between trading the two, one is a stock type instrument. So if you want to go short, it's harder to do that. The leverage is less. You need more margin. It's definitely doable, and I'm sure there is a reverse on the S&P. Like I know with the NASDAQ, there's the triple Q, which is an inverse multiple of the NASDAQ index. I'm sure there's one for the S&P also, and then you can go long that. But futures contracts are made for doing what I do and what you guys are doing intraday day trading. They're made for that much more than the stock type instruments are. They can have excellent liquidity, cheap commissions, and cheap margins to trade the futures versus the equity equivalent. Thad Deca, thanks for your comment. Thanks all of you for your comments, by the way. People in this video that I respond to, people that I write back to, everybody, thank you for your comments. I appreciate those. Sometimes it's a bit hard to keep up on them, but that's a great problem to have. I really appreciate the engagement, guys. Setchu says, what would you consider, how many points per contract per month would you consider to be a good stat? That's a really interesting question. It depends on how you're trading. If you're trading the way I am, say, it depends on where you are. If you've been profitable for 5 or 10 years and you're trading 5 days a week, it'll be a different answer than if you're in your first year, right? So it's not really like a one answer fits all for this. But, and my neighbor starts up his lawnmower. Let's say if you're trading 5 days a week, it's hard to say, but like if you get 100 points a month, regardless of how much you're trading, you know, that's not really killing it, but that's still pretty darn good, because like if you're consistently able to get 100 points a month, you can make all the money you'll ever need to make, right? Because you can scale up 5 contracts, 10 contracts. 100 points a month is $5,000 a month per contract. How many of those do you really need? If you're proficient at this and you can make 25 points a week and you can make 100 points approximately a month, and you've been doing this for a while consistently and you've got 50 grand to trade, I mean, you could trade 3, 4, 5 contracts and make more money than realistically I would need. But even if you make 10 points a week, 40 points a month, 50 points a month, that's still good. $2,500 a month on one contract. And if you've got 25 grand, you can trade 2 or 3 contracts as long as you're consistent. You know, it's easy to see that it's quite easy to make a fair bit of money. The big thing is the consistency, and that's what's difficult to get. As far as, he also asked, do you ever have losing months? I haven't had a losing month in a very long time, but I've had plenty of them. Aaron, have you ever looked at book maps? Not really. In passing, I haven't given it a whole lot of attention, quite honestly. I've looked at a lot of different things, but the more I do, the more I find that really all you need is the price chart and a little bit of an internal idea of what's happening in the market. So, but I'm open to looking at just about anything. Well, he's really going to town there. He got a new zero turn this year, and he likes to take it out just about every time he can. So anyway, I hope I got everybody. I know I didn't, but I hope I got most of you guys. Just FYI, if you see me heart your question, but I don't respond to it, its answer is going to be in a video. Otherwise, I will try and respond to everybody one way or the other, whether it be typing or in a video, in the comments. Thank you so much for those. I really appreciate them. Keep them coming down there. Out of curiosity, let me know what you think of the quality of this video and maybe what I took it on. It's not a phone, it's something else. Thank you so much for watching as always. Have a fantastic weekend. I'll see you guys again soon.